Okay, so here are a few examples of uses for dynamics processing. Vocals. If you want to make a vocal more consistent in volume, a compressor with fast attack and release times will be able to keep up with the quicker volume changes, allowing you to tame the louder parts in this vocal, thus allowing you to increase the overall volume, allowing you to bring the volume of the quieter parts to roughly the same volume that the louder parts were, achieving a much more consistent volume in your vocal. I have my voice going through a compressor right now, which is useful because the microphone is way over here. All right, if you want a ringier snare, there's a good trick for that. You can also boost the ringiest frequency with an EQ and push that frequency up into that compressor, and then that will help accentuate that ring. Okay, so a louder snare drum. So sometimes you might want your snare to kind of dominate the mix, but you don't actually want your snare drum to be so much louder than the rest of the mix that it causes unnecessary pumping on your master bus. One way to do that is to put a clipper on your snare bus and push the snare up into that clipper. And you can set the threshold of the clipper basically at a level that you want the snare to duck the master bus compressor. So usually I'll want the snare drum to be a little bit heavy on the mix because I want this master bus compressor to duck a little bit as part of my overall snare shaping. And then to do that, I will balance the output of the clipper with the threshold of the master bus compressor. And then by doing that, I can control everything. And by having the threshold for the clipper in place, it lets me basically increase the volume before the clipper rather than on the fader bus or in the volume fader of the track. And then by increasing it there, I'm just crunching it up and I'm making it sound louder than it really is without actually sending an increase of volume to the master bus. A more consistent bass guitar volume. So a lot of times bass performances will just kind of be all over the place, either due to inconsistencies in the performance or just, shit happens, and bass can just be kind of like all over the place and you have to just clamp down on it, put it in a headlock, body slam it, whatever the you have to do. And you can do that either with, like a lot of times, a combination of compression and limiting will help. Like you can kind of squeeze it a little bit and then use the limiter just to absolutely, keep everything in check. Another effective way to deal with this is multiband compression, but I'm going to talk about that in another video. So to keep this kind of simple, just don't be afraid to smash that fucking bass, dude. You thought I was going to say smash the like button. I did not. I said smash the bass, the low end, whatever, of the bass. It's fine. Okay, the classic one, to make a mix louder. I like to do this in various stages. I know there's like a lot of plugins that are just like mastering or whatever, and it does everything all in one. But generally, I like to spread this out over an entire mix. Like I'm going to have different forms of compression and dynamics control on basically every bus: kick bus, snare bus, drums bus, parallel drums bus, vocal bus. I'm compressing vocals on the way in and on the bus level and on like the main. I've got another one just on all of the vocals. Bass always has a ton of compression. So as you can see, all of these things are having their dynamic range limited at various stages. And then I hit the mix bus, and then I'll have a bit of subtle compression there. And a lot of times I actually want this to pump a little bit. I want to hear some movement. On the master bus, there might be a little bit more compression, but usually not. I will usually use saturation to just kind of literally saturate everything, make everything sound more and more full, more juicy, bigger. And then I'll usually have various stages of clipping. And these are usually just doing a little bit at a time. So like if I'm looking at the waveform and I still have some drum spikes that are kind of poking out of the mix a little bit too much, I will focus on just those so I can basically get everything even, and then just little tiny stages of clipping. And then I'm usually following everything up with a limiter at the very end that's just doing hardly anything. So like if you look at my master bus, it'll look like, oh man, he's got a shit ton of plugins, but they're all just doing a little bit of stuff. And different strokes for different folks, but I feel like I can keep things a lot more intact if I do things in subtle stages rather than all at once using one tool. but your mileage may vary. This will allow you to tame the louder parts and increase the overall volume to, can you hear that? It's bouncing off my hand. That's weird. Getting a weird phase thing, I think. You hear that? All right, enough of that.